question. Your projects are both personal and very intimate, and I'm excited to learn more about your process and your work too, so thank you for speaking with me and to all of us further. And again, congratulations on both being here. So I have a few questions prepared, and afterwards we'll have a small amount of time for Q&A. If you guys want to prepare some questions ahead of time, that'd be nice too. But I'm going to start with who wants to go first?
You told me.
It's very contradicting, okay? So I'll start with Toby. Toby, with your project, what really stands out to me is this concept of nationhood and identity somewhat being artificial. I read a quote in your project statement where you said, if one of the youth you were interviewing had been born just a block difference, his whole life would have been different, and that really struck me. Can you speak a little bit further about the environment that these youth are growing up in Belfast?
Yes, they grew up just in a very locked up neighborhood, because if you're from one community, if you grow up in one community, you don't have the possibility just to cross the peace wall or go to another neighborhood. So there is not much contact in between the young communities, and I think it is something they don't even realize. I mean, the quote you mentioned was actually done by Paul McGwee, who wrote the introduction to my book, and he said that I think 15 years after he left Belfast. So he just recognized that he was one block away from being born his enemy. And I think this is something very, very special in Belfast, that you have these locked up communities. And for me as a photographer, it was, I could cross the barrier several times a day, which is something the kids there won't do probably their whole life. So that was very special.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier at the bar about you bringing books to some of the subjects you would photograph later on. And it sounds like you developed a really deep and intimate relationship with them. And I photograph teenagers as well, so I'm a little bit biased, but I wanted to ask you what it's like working with this age group in particular. So working with teenagers, what's your process with interviewing them and photographing them, and what kind of relationship do you have with your subjects?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar every time when you try to get in touch with them, because the structure of each group is somehow the same. So you always have one guy who is somehow interested in what you're doing, then there is one who is somehow the troublemaker, and so it always takes time to get the trust of these groups. And but I think if you come back over and over again, it's easier each time you come back, and you get closer to them every time. And so I think if you just give them the attention they deserve, and they somehow, I mean, nobody cares about these kids, and I think they're just looking for a better future, and what is going nowadays, nobody knows what will be in the future for them. So I think it's just the continuation of a project like that.
Thank you. And Rory, I think your project deals with very similar themes about concepts of nationhood and identity. And especially your project, I think, brings to light a part of American history that not many of us have known or heard about prior. So first, I just want to ask you how you found this idea and what led you to start photographing this project.
Sure. Is this on?
No.
Hold that one so you can make noise while I'm talking. Yeah. I should mention, I forgot to thank the people in my photographs as I was first introduced. That's who the project is about, and that's why I'm here. And so I extend a big thank you to them. The idea came about completely randomly. A lot of people know the same stories of Mississippi, and quite often they're negative, which is very unfortunate because there's so much positivity in Mississippi. And as I mentioned, it was quite random. I knew that I didn't want to do another negative story about Mississippi, between poverty, racism, bad education. And a happy moment occurred in front of me where I saw a small group of African-American cowboys and cowgirls in our annual Christmas parade. And I literally jumped into the parade and asked if I could come and photograph them, and that was it. And in a very short period of time, I was meeting people every couple of days, and the project is all shot in the backyard of where I live, so it's very easy to get to know these people quickly and closely, and I think that's how the project has worked and taken off, and similar to Toby, just getting to know the people really well and shining some light on history that's been overlooked, and I think because of that history, people are really happy to share their stories. They want a chance to share their identity as a cowboy or a cowgirl.
And was it a history that you had known about prior, or just by experience you found out about it?
Just by, again, being at a Christmas parade at the right time. I grew up in Maine, so we don't have much diversity in Maine, and we don't have many cowboys in Maine. So it was like this moment in my own life where I was like, okay, there's a story here. And not actually trained as a photographer, I'm trained as a journalist, so it was kind of like my instinct as a journalist to see what the story was, and that's how it took off.
And you might have already answered the next question I was going to ask you, but I was going to ask you if you could try to think about or explain the first photograph that you took that was really working for the project, where you thought, okay, I have something here, this means something, I'm going to keep going in this direction.
One of the earlier photos in the project was a picture of a grandfather named Rogers Beeman with his grandson, and his name is Z. Beeman. And so everyone knows Rogers because he's been around for forever as the guy that's training horses or actually riding in the parade. And it's him who introduced this tradition to his grandson. And so to me, that it was the picture of the two of them after the Christmas parade where I realized, okay, this is a generational cultural thing that many people are overlooking, even where I'm based in the Mississippi Delta. And I think just from taking that picture, I realized that this is a significant history that needs to be shared from here in Mississippi to beyond.
Yeah, for sure. This next question can be for either one of you who feels like answering. But what are your subjects or characters that you photograph? What do they think of the projects that you're doing and the images that you're making? And do you maintain contact with them? Either one of you.
It's just like I said before. I mean, I published a book at March this year, and in June I went back to bring a copy of the book to most of the kids in the book, and so I'm still in touch with them, and I think they love the book and they like the photos of the book, so I definitely want to keep on going to stay in touch with them and see what will happen to them in 3 years or in 5 years.
In the beginning, were they confused by why you were so interested in them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you come there and tell them what you want to do, and in the beginning they don't really understand what's it about. So, and you know that they are not used to being photographed, and but like I said before, if you come back several times, then they got into the project, and yeah.
Yeah, some similarities for me as well. You know, in the rural Mississippi Delta where I'm based, it's not often that you'll see photojournalists based there, and so to have somebody following you with a camera is a unique experience for them, and to come back and see them every few days, and on occasion bring prints. For some of the younger ones, that may be the first time that they've had a tangible copy of a picture of themselves because they're so used to screens and everything digital, and so the print, you know, the gifting of prints is like a really simple thing to do that really builds the bond as well. And social media has also been part of my project where the people are seeing pictures of them, and then it will go, who knows where it ends up, and seen in different parts of the world even, and so they actually really love that attention as well. So it's been interesting to do the tangible interaction as well as digital.
A question not really about your projects, but about how you both work and operate as photographers. I'd be curious to know what motivates you to continue working on projects like these and taking pictures like these. I think long-term work is complicated to do financially and emotionally, and I'd be curious to know what really motivates you. Either one of you.
Yeah, it's a passion project, right? It's something that you feel a connection with as a working photographer. For me, at least, I take great honor in the opportunity to share other people's stories. And when someone opens their life up to you and gives you that opportunity, it's invaluable. And I think there's also extreme value in taking on a project that you can do every few days when it's in your backyard. And I know Toby has a little bit of like a travel challenge, but for me in my project being based in Mississippi, it's been absolutely life-changing to be so close to the people who are in the photographs that, you know, it's almost beyond journalism, where I have these personal relationships and friendships and consistently being a part of each other's life. That's, to me, that's the most valuable thing of all.
Yeah, I think it's almost similar what Rory said, to be part of their lives and to see what's going on there. I mean, sometimes you spend the whole day with them and you don't shoot a single film, and in the end, of course, you want to get your photos, but you shouldn't feel that this day was for nothing. I mean, it was a very valuable day, and a friend of mine once even said he believes that I shoot without any film in the camera. I just want to get close to the people. So that's not true, because in the end you wait for the right picture, but you know what I mean. It's somehow more than just taking the photo.
Let me see. I have probably too many for our time, so let me know if I'm going to go over.
Yeah,
It's okay?
some time. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think I'd like to know, and perhaps other people here would like to know, if these are ongoing projects, and if so, where do you see yourself taking this in the future?
Yeah, as long as I'm based in Mississippi, I would like to continue the project, and I'm very curious to see how and if the population of people taking part in horse riding in the Mississippi Delta increases. I know a lot of you are probably aware of Old Town Road. Everybody's heard that song. It was like this #1 song for a record-setting amount of time, and it started to bring the discourse about Black cowboy history and Black cowgirl history a little bit more mainstream. And so I'm curious to see if that changes in Mississippi and how rural America is impacted by that. And I'd like to do a book soon, hopefully within the next couple of years. And even after the book, just keep working on it, keep going. I know the connections are deep enough that I'm going to be involved with these people somehow, one way or another.
So never ending.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we already published the book in March, but anyway, the project keeps on going, and I think especially now after Brexit in October, it'll be interesting just to see the effects on the young people of both communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, not to give an overall ending question before I open up for Q&A, but I'm curious if there's something in particular, if you could think of one takeaway that you'd like your audience to have from seeing your work. Or multiple, maybe not just one, but...
I guess, specific to cowboy and cowgirl culture, I think, is just considering how history is shared with us and what the history books say versus what actually exists throughout time. And it's been eye-opening for me to learn about how diverse that culture is in the US and across the world. And I think also we're here, you know, talking about documentary and photojournalistic work, and just how imperative now it is to share stories of people so that we continue to learn what reality is and have a platform for people who don't often have a chance to share their lives and their voices. It's really, really significant.
I didn't really get the question.
If there's something that your audience should take away from your work, if you could wish that, like what would you like people to think on or leave with after viewing your book or your images?
Yeah, well, I think I don't know. Maybe people. I don't know if the right people will watch the book. If you see the book, maybe the people who make the decisions in Westminster should watch the book, and probably they don't do. But yeah.
So maybe we could open up for some Q&A. If anyone in the audience have any questions, we can have a microphone ready, perhaps, or speak very loud. Yeah.
So, Rory and Toby, you mentioned that you share on social media. Could you maybe clue us into, like, if it's Instagram or Facebook and what where we can find you guys?
So I heard everything, like, how do we decide where it goes on which platform, or?
No, like, how do we, if we want, you said you share on social media, if we want to follow you on social media, like, how would we follow you?
Gotcha. By the way, that's digital silver imaging back there. They did like the best prints of all of Photoville, so please. We forgot to thank them earlier, but that beautiful, beautiful prints. For me, I'm on Instagram, so it's just Rory Doyle Photo, RORYDOYLE photo. I also have the same handle on Twitter and Facebook. I don't really have. I have a personal page. If you can find me, go for it. Yeah.
I only got my first smartphone half a year ago, so I'm not really famous on Instagram, but maybe after tonight. I think it's Toby Binder Photography.
But he's not certain, so double check. Any other questions in the audience? Yeah, Allison.
Toby, I wasn't really clear on how you picked Northern Ireland, the kids there to work on, and there's such a great history during the troubles of Gilles Perez and Ed Cashy, all these people who shot the kids and people of Northern Ireland. I wondered why you chose this area as the subject matter, and if you were intimidated. I know a lot of students are intimidated to tackle something that someone has already photographed before. And did that bother you? Did that worry you? Did you look at their work to inspire you or to not repeat it?
Well, my decision to go to Northern Ireland, first of all, was because in the Brexit referendum, Northern Ireland as a country voted to remain in the EU, but will have to leave it as part of the United Kingdom. So that was one reason to go to Northern Ireland. And the separation that most of the Catholic people voted to remain and the Protestant people voted to leave. That was another reason why I went there. And I was in Belfast before I started the project. And of course I didn't know about the work that has been done during the Troubles there. But I tried to keep on going my series that I started in the UK, in Scotland and north of England before. So yeah, I knew about the work, but I tried not to care about it that much.
Rory, what made you move to Mississippi?
So I grew up in Maine, went to college in Vermont, and picked anywhere that would provide me a graduate assistantship to get a master's degree. And Mississippi has a shortage of teachers, so that's how my wife and I ended up there. And we had no knowledge of Mississippi. We moved with one car of possessions and didn't know what we were getting into, but it's a fascinating place. It's an amazing place, unlike anything that I experienced growing up in New England, and we really love it. It's such a complicated and remarkable history, and the people are the reason we stay.
Yeah, we have time for one more question. You guys can fight it out between you. Whoever wants to.
So I'm the one Mississippian in the room. So of course my question is, well, of course, Rory, parents of all three. So my question is for Rory, of course. Can you talk about the responsibility of being a photographer and representing this group in the Mississippi Delta? And I've had conversations with you about this, and not only the responsibility just as a photographer, but the responsibility as you start to get recognition for this work that you have, and how you go back to the Kroger and to the Double Click and see these people, and they're seeing you online and the success that you're having. Can you talk about that process? Because I think that's what a lot of photographers struggle with, is what do we do once we start getting recognition and all these people who we've been documenting witnessed that.
Yeah, it's a complicated question. I think it appears in a lot of documentary projects, and then particularly when you live where you're seeing these people. It's not parachute journalism, and maintaining an honest integrity in the work that you do, not in any way taking advantage of this community. The struggle, of course, is, yes, when they see an award come in or see some attention for the project, I constantly think about how can I get them more involved and how can they be a part of the project, and there's things that I'm working on with them directly, where it's helping to organize a rodeo or fundraising for events that they're putting on, and really just letting them be as actively a part of it as I can. It's obviously a challenge, and also there's gray areas about, okay, I'm a journalist, or am I also a friend? And so you're constantly having to think about ethics. But above all, you have to be honest and do your job with integrity. Hope that answers. That was a deep question, Chandler.
Barbara handed me the mic, so I guess I get to ask one more question, which is about influence and people who've influenced you. And since I'm going to ask you the question, I'll tell you, if I were running out of my house with just one book, it would be a book by Eugene Atget on France, and Paris specifically. So I have a question for each of you. If you could only take one photo book out with you that influenced you the most, who would they each be?
Toby Binder.
You didn't buy my book, did you?
So off the top of my head, there's actually an amazing book, and shamefully, I don't remember the photographer's name. It's quite an old book, but it's, I think I'm sorry, I forget the last name, but it's called Fletcher Street. And it's about the African-American cowboys and cowgirls in the city setting of Philadelphia. And it's beautiful, beautiful work. I purchased a copy of the book, and it's just really inspiring, and also quite interesting to compare it to the rural cowboy experience versus the city scene. I don't have a book, so you can't say me.
Is that Philadelphia, Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just not possible. There are so many great books, and yeah, I wouldn't take any.